Hey there! Welcome to another episode of Fix It Tony. Today is going to be an interesting project. So, I was hearing a very strange noise from our car, a squeaky, clicky noise, and it started all of a sudden, and when we opened the hood, you saw and heard this. Do you notice the metal chips flying? So, first thing I had to do was try to figure out what could actually be the problem. My initial assessment was my fan clutch. I figured the fan clutch was original, and so that means it could be 15, 20, 25 years old at the oldest. And when I checked online, that seems to be a very long time for a fan clutch to actually survive and function. So my first likelihood of target was my fan clutch, and that is a device that helps to control the fan speed and control engine cooling. Then I had to figure out how to remove a fan clutch, watched a lot of YouTube videos, tried to read instructions online. First and foremost, I had to remove the serpentine belt in order to gain access to it, and I had to remove the radiator shroud. I didn't show that here because this video and project was done before the idea of me actually moving forward with Fix It Tony. So there are some steps here missing, but it's an interesting story to tell. So this next little video clip is going to show after I removed the serpentine belt, which actually wasn't as hard as I thought, but it did require, some finagling. So that was tough. You can hear the rattling of the bearings. And then all of a sudden you see that wiggling. So what I realized most likely was happening was I had a bad fan bearing clutch. I mean, not a fan bearing clutch, fan bearing bracket. That means there's a bracket with a wheel bearing on it that's attached to the engine block. That wheel there, that smooth belt wheel, is attached to, and then also attached to this bearing bracket. Fan bearing bracket is the fan clutch and the rest of the assembly. So I knew I had to remove and get a new bracket because that much wiggling tells me that there was something else going on. So then I had to figure out how to remove the fan bearing bracket. So I did pull off some instructions. I was able to find one video online, but the most helpful was my Mercedes service manual. I did have to remove my cooling line. There's a pipe you can see just above the wheel there. The pulley. That had to be removed. That meant draining my coolant, and I figured my coolant needed replacing anyway because it's been an unknown period of time. So this project has become a replacement of the fan clutch to the replacement of the fan bearing bracket. Then now I needed to do a coolant flush. So this project ended up being quite involved. There was no reason to not do a full coolant flush if I already had to remove my some coolant in order to access the bearing bracket. So this was a very labor-intensive project. The other problem I had was I did find instructions and some tools online to help me remove the fan clutch. All the instructions and videos online illustrated that I had to go down between the radiator and the fan clutch with a very thin wrench and loosen a center bolt. I had to also support the wheel from spinning using a particular special tool that had to hook up or engage the pulley and the bracket. Well, suffice to say that center bolt attaching the fan clutch to the bracket assembly was not going anywhere. I used all the right tools and techniques, and it felt like either the bolt was seized, rusted, um, and definitely started to strip as I was working on it. The other thing I noticed was my Allen keys were twisting, so this bolt was definitely in and not coming out. I took it to a shop, and they wanted to charge me between $1,000 and $1,200 to remove the bolt, um, because they had to drain the coolant flush, remove the radiator, remove the entire front end, and drill the bolt out. So, $50, $60 worth of parts was going to cost me over $1,000. I was quite disheartened, to say the least, and I was determined to find another way to get this fan clutch and bearing bracket off, instead of paying someone an enormous amount of money, um, to do it a way that they thought they could do it. So first and foremost, what I wanted to do was to see whether or not I can cut off the bolt. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out so well. But the first thing I needed to do, as part of a MacGyvering type of approach, was to remove my plastic fan. The way that I did that is that I knew there were 3 bolts attaching it to the fan clutch, so I was able to remove the fan blade from the clutch itself, and that wasn't too hard. The bolts went off easy, and I was able to remove that. And then you'll see now in the next picture coming up, you'll see the fan and how it was removed. It was pretty dirty, so I ended up cleaning it and putting it off to the side very carefully. And then you can see now next the fan clutch, what it looks like with the fan removed. Now, this picture shows the belt on, but I already had removed the belt. So I decided to break the bearings or try to break the fan clutch off. And the way that I did that was using a chisel and hammer. For about 15 to 20 minutes of banging, I was able to break the bearing and clutch off. And I knew I damaged the pulley, but I knew I would just buy a new pulley anyway. So I did that. And I knew I was getting a new bearing bracket. So you can sort of see what the fan clutch bearing assembly looked like actually on the bearing bracket. This photo shows what the pulley looked like. It also shows the part number that I used to buy a replacement pulley. And then next you will see the fan clutch on what it looked like. It looked pretty old and original, and the way that I think the reason I think it was original and the bolt was seized is because this particular label looks very much 90s style. Again, this is what it looked like with the bearing bracket. You can see it just behind the pulley system, the bearing bracket. So I was able to remove the bearing bracket, and that center bolt that you're seeing right there stripped was the bolt that was supposed to I was supposed to try to remove and get the clutch off. This is what the bearing bracket looked like when I removed it. It's definitely original, but the backside is telling. You can see how the backside, the bearing cover and the bearings all started to fall out, and it was just undergoing self-destruction. That was quite shocking to see. This is just a close-up, seeing how the bearings in the back got destroyed over time, and then the part number that also helped to use. This is a side-to-side comparison of the bottom is the new bearing bracket, and the top is the old bearing bracket. You can see how much nicer or how it was supposed to look. This is what a new fan clutch looks like. This is the replacement product that I put in, and I have to assemble that into the fan unit. So this is the fan unit part number, just in case if I were to break the fan blade, but I didn't. So what I had to do was put the fan clutch into the fan. It's important to know which side of the fan faces to the front. I think it's important to point that out. And then I put some Loctite on each bolt and torqued it down to specifications. Then I reassembled everything, and you'll see how it works. Pretty nice. Bracket was put back in. I put the pipe back in for the coolant system. Coolant system was flushed. before taking off your serpentine belt, definitely take a lot of pictures of how it actually courses through. There's a belt tensioner that you have to use in order to loosen the belt. That's a whole other video and process that I didn't show. And then the final product working is... So very happy. Thank you for this short video. Please subscribe or like this video. Again, this was more of a show and tell, not necessarily a step-by-step. Thanks.